to Bookwrights House, where we uncover stories that bring history, humanity, and imagination together. Today features takes us into the skies of World War II with Sky Knights. The greatest enemy is the darkness within, a powerful and deeply moving historical novel by James Domenighini. So, Jim, welcome to Bookwrights House. It's always an honor to have you with us. Okay,
Thank you. So
so
it's an honor just to work with you.
thank you so much.
Seriously.
So let's start first with the spark of inspiration. So you grew up immersed in classic sci-fi like Star Trek and Lost in Space, stories that explored new frontiers. So how did
Mhm.
those early influences shape the way you approach the historical frontier of the
Well,
European theater?
it just, how would I put it, widened my imagination. But when my first thought about this novel was years before I even tried to write a novel. In 1975, I was walking across one of our rice fields. It was just weeks before we'd be flooding water into it and then planting rice. In the mountains to the west of me was this terrific thunderstorms going on. The lightning was so bright that sometimes it illuminated the ground around me. And it was probably 100 miles away out over the ocean. And I had this sudden thought that could be spaceships fighting out there. So this is 2 years before Star Wars came out. And I had that idea. And then I just dropped it. And I did other things with my life for a long time. And then I decided to walk back to that time when when I wanted to learn how to be a good writer and do it better. So I started writing that novel, and every time I finished it, I started all over again. I did this for 9 years because I did all of those times during that I didn't really like what I had. And then 9/11 happened, and that changed the whole theme to it. And that's when it became a better novel because of what happened in the country. So it's about a young man who his best friend in all the world was his father. His father would take trips into space to other planets to sell products and stuff. And when he was 12, his father never came home. His father was killed. And so he only had his mom, and his mom never wanted children, and she was cold to him all the time. He went to a military school after becoming of age that he could to learn how to fly these space fighters. And one time when he came home, there was somebody else living in his apartment, and nobody had any way to trace her down, his mother. So he didn't have anybody anymore except the people that he trained with, and later the ones that he worked with. So where the story begins, it starts with him and several other pilots flying around this gas giant. It's not a Jupiter or a Saturn-sized one, but it has these beautiful colors in it when it's from the lightning and storms in it. And the reason they're flying around this planet, they've taken out of their fighters. Their fighters have a cannon in the nose, an energy weapon, and they have removed that and put into it a device allowing them to search through the atmosphere looking for this missing lifeboat. This lifeboat is several lifeboats were rescued. This one has fallen deep into the planet. A ship that was orbiting it, a liner, took a hit from a meteorite, which crippled the ship. And they had abandoned ship, and so he's looking for that. Now, what's one of the things that is key about this is that besides him flying this ship, he has an artificial intelligence operating the ship with him. And this particular character is a by-the-book type of artificial intelligence. So when the order comes for him to give up the search, that this AI tries to take over the fighter, and he manages to outwit him. I know it doesn't sound realistic, but then none of it is. And he manages to dive deep down into the atmosphere to look for these people. When I originally wrote it, I had a 40-page chapter there of all the things he experienced. And then after, in the final version of it, I realized that was far too much for somebody to be able to stomach. So I cut it down to maybe 15 or 20 pages. Got rid of that. And it turns out, on a sidebar here, it turns out that lots of first-time writers write these really big, long chapters like that. So I wasn't alone in that. But I chose to reduce it. So his commanding officers tell him to return because they've assumed after so many days that nobody can be alive down in the atmosphere. And he refuses to do that. He does find them. He comes back. He's given a medal. And his commanding officers, who are jealous of him and angry with him, kick him out of the squadron. So he goes to, he gets to say goodbye to the young woman he's in love with. But he finds out that, well, he's in love with her. She just sees him as a best friend and is not in love with him. So he's emotionally crushed in many different ways. And he goes to a planet where lots of other pilots are waiting to get their chance to fly too, because there's more pilots coming out than there are missions and fighters for them to be in. I spent a fair amount of time describing this planet because I wanted it to be realistic. And humanity's not going to land on planets that are so nasty that you can't live on them. We can't live on Venus because the atmosphere will crush us and it's full of poisons. We can't live on Mercury because one side has temperatures below or approaching absolute zero, and on the other side is facing the sun, and walking out even in a heavy spacesuit, you'd only last for 3 or 4 minutes before you would be burned to death. So planets like that are not for humanity. Planets that are more like the planet Earth is where we would be going. And so he's on a world like that. Then he finds out that there's a planet far across the colonized bases of the humanity that's in a deep war with another race that wants to own that planet as well. And so he gets a chance to go with them. And there he runs across an old friend of his, and he gets to know people. And there's some really interesting characters and really interesting things. One of the things is that I'm not stealing this from Star Trek with their holodecks, with all these things, but they have these projections on the wall that are so realistic that you feel like you're there. But there's no, so they have things like that. And there's a lot of other things too that are in there. I don't want to give away the whole story because I want you to read it. But in every one of my novels that I write, I put in challenges. I make sure that there's a lot of conflict in there, and I put in ideas, some of them personal and some just observational, about how people are and what they fear and what they love and all the conflict that occurs in the world. And in this story, there's a lot of conflict. He meets a new young woman who he's attracted to, but there's another pilot that claims that she and he are a couple, but that's not true. And so this guy is much more powerful, physically powerful than my hero, and there's some violence involved. And one of the people that he works with, this female fighter pilot, tells him, you need to learn how to fight better if you're going to be this, get past this guy. And she works in a 3-room complex on this space carrier. It's not like the aircraft carriers we have today, but it's similar in concept. And she has all these fictional characters, dragons and flying horses and stuff like that, moving on her walls because that's what she likes to see. And personally, I got that idea from the first Disney film about music and the animation, and that was fun. So things like that happen. He has training officers that don't like him. They don't like the idea that he was personally picked by the commanding general because he had a friendship with one of the officers on the original ship that my main character is on. His name is Hector Crossman. Some people think that his name is there because he's Hispanic, but not exactly true, because the English still use the name Hector, and they've used it for hundreds of years. It's been a very common name. In fact, a friend of mine said he went to England once and he said, everybody I met, their name was Hector. Probably not. He probably only met 2 people. But so I put that in there. But one of my closest friends said, no, you put it in there because you want the character to be Hispanic. So what can you do? So there's exciting moments to it. I take ideas from it from the Korean War. I found looking at military science fiction, you either have people who are fighting the war during the time of Napoleon with the English, or you find somebody's fighting in Vietnam, or they're not fighting in World War II, or they're that's what they're doing. So I decided to take the fact that the first jet fighters fought in the Korean War, and so I adapt some of those things. And actually, at the very end of the book, the final battle, I took an actual combat scene that I had heard about, and I inserted that in the story there. So the spacecraft and the characters are fictional, but the combat is actually based on historic fact.
It's a good one. You made lots of research, and that's a good one. Okay, so I stated earlier that the title is intriguing. So the subtitle, "The Greatest Enemy is the Darkness Within," suggests a psychological depth beyond the cockpit. So was there a specific historical account or personal realization that sparked the idea?
This is fictional,
conflict?
but it's important. Like I said, I try to put in important issues too. So he doesn't have a family except the people he's flying with. So there's a new squadron. He's made a lot of good friends, and they go into combat. And one of the pilots, a female pilot that's a girlfriend of his best friend from academy days, is shot down. And while searching for her, he just drops his massive fighter plane down to the street level and is searching for her. And while searching for her, he comes across a group of aliens who are killing human prisoners. They're basically taking axes and chopping them up and killing them that way. And he's horrified by this and angered, and he fires his weapon, which kills prisoners and the aliens alike. And then he realizes that the young woman that he's trying to find, she could be killed this way too. And so he does find her, and a search and rescue craft comes down and rescues her. But he's got that fear. He has no family on Earth. He has only the people he flies with, and some or all of them could be killed. And that eats away at him. So what he does is he goes off mission, and he completes what he has to do on a mission, and then he goes hunting for the enemy. He wants to beat them down so bad that they'll want to surrender. But it's an impossible thing, because one man against millions is impossible odds. Not ads, but it's too much problem there. And So that's what's eating at him. That the enemy within is his fear and his anger. And he's so afraid that as it goes along, the relationship he's made with the new young woman and stuff, who definitely cares about him, starts to eat at him. He hates the fact that she could get killed and she has to fly every day, and so he starts hating her. He hates members of his squadron, people who he doesn't like and people who he does like, and he begins to hate himself because of all of that too. He's put a burden on himself that nobody can. I don't know how to put the words together at the moment, but he can't be soothed by it. He can't. And so it's just eating away. His relationship with the young woman falls apart. His relationship with his friends fall apart until the day when he has to decide in a mission to rescue people on the ground, soldiers on the ground fighting the aliens. And that's the same aliens as in my next novel, Chaos Company. So his commanding general calls him in and tells him that he has to let them take care of themselves, that they can do that. And you have to choose between either saving these people or saving your friends. And he goes into that battle, and I won't tell you which he chooses, but a lot of his friends do die. And he's learned to let go and let them be themselves and make the choices that they have to do. So that's where that's the enemy within, all that hate and all that fear. And you see that today. We just saw a few nights ago somebody trying to kill somebody else on TV. I'm not going to get into politics. That's not part of this story or anything else. But that is happening, and it's happening all over the world. And we have to overcome that. Maybe somebody will read that story and find something to soothe them, something that heal their anger and their fear. And maybe not. Maybe they'll just do what the primary purpose of the story is, which is to tell a good story. And maybe they'll enjoy that. I'm not God, so I can't change people, but I can offer them a way to do it. And if they can't, that's all I can say. What next?
Okay, I want to learn about how do you navigate the line between honoring the distant numbers of historical records and creating the lived experience of your fictional character. So yeah, maintaining the balance between fiction and real life experiences.
Well, the fact is that it's fiction. There's a lot of fiction out there. We have people who brag about the things they've done and they've never done them because I don't know how to answer that one. It's not really, in fiction, it doesn't really work that way. Fiction is just fiction, but you put things in there that help people open their eyes or whatever it is that you want to make it so that it's more realistic. It's not realistic because, in one way, because we're only getting to AIs now. And when I wrote that book, I had an AI for his co-pilot and another AI from a different ship for his co-pilot. And they had different personalities. The AI while fighting on this planet questions the concept of death and life after death. I don't think there's any AIs right now that can do that. But it's not so much about that. It's just showing some of the possibilities. In my universe, there are real robots. And the robots, when they become self-aware, are willing to serve mankind, but they're not willing to kill anybody. So they're not warriors, they're just servants. But they demand the same respect as human beings get.
Okay, so moving forward, let's talk about themes and emotional resonance. So the weight of
Say
sacrifice.
that again?
the themes and emotional resonance. Okay, so the weight of sacrifice. In the book, you explore the weight of lives hanging in the balance. How did you personally manage the emotional toll of writing about the sacrifices made by this young man?
Well, I did study a lot of military history. I had my dad's brother died at Omaha Beach in World War II. I've known people who survived wars and family members of theirs who've not. And, you just accumulate all this stuff and you want to, well, I wanted to be as realistic as I could in the storytelling. Humans do. Humans are a weird group of people, of animals. We make excuses for hating people that are not legitimate. And we do that because we're jealous or we feel small or anything like that. And I don't know how to put this in any other way. I've done many things, but I've never attacked anybody or hurt anybody purposely. And I've been very careful. I've been pulled over by police officers because they're concerned about me, but I've never hurt anybody with a car in my life or any other vehicle. I'm very careful with all that. And I think most people are.
Camaraderie as a shield. The bond between pilots is a central pillar of the book, as you stated. So, in your view, was this brotherhood a necessity for survival or something that made the losses even harder to bear?
Well, this point in my life, I've lost, in the last 30 years, uncles and aunts and cousins and good friends. And and I moved from the town I lived in to this new town because they were all like ghosts to me. And it was just hard to go around and say, oh, yeah, that's where my cousin Gary and I used to go to eat ice cream or something like that. And it's hard to deal with that. And I think everybody has that difficulty. I have a good, supportive family, but their numbers are diminishing. So, and I don't really have I can't really, some of this stuff just comes to you and you write about it. And it's not something that you, how to put it, that in your everyday life you think about. But in my history for this, figuring this out is watching movies. I did get a lot out of Band of Brothers, but I'd already written this novel by the time that became available. And I've read a lot of military history, and I found out that my wife's family, that it goes back, the military history for them, back to the Civil War and maybe all the way back to the Revolutionary War. And I've read some of the essays by them, and it's really, if you develop real friends, then if they get sick or die or they get killed in car accidents or anything like that, is really hard on you. So I took things like that and I put that out there for that and for my Chaos Company series and for the new novel I'm working on.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, so I really want to talk about the author's perspective. So, your evolution as a writer, how did your perspective on military history change from when you were a fan of the genre to when you finished writing this book?
There was never the concept of being a fan. It was just being interested in what happened to these people and how it worked out. I read a novel last year, not a novel, but a historical book last year about one of the great writers of military activity. I can't even remember his name right now, but or maybe I don't want to say it, I guess, because he suffered so much, and he unlike most reporters, he was up on the front line. One day when he was in Italy and the Germans were firing artillery shells into this little town he was in. One hit the building he was in, and he woke up after the explosion with all this wood and pieces of the wall all over him. He wasn't injured, but his first thought was, my God, what happened to my typewriter? And so he found out his typewriter was in better shape than the building was. But he was concerned about that. His primary interest was in the humanity of the war and what was going on with people. He talked to people. He wasn't interested in battles. He was interested in the people. And so that was his priority. And that's what my stories are about. I mean, I have certain things that I do. Every one of my science fiction novels, I put in a new alien species in it. And I put in characters who are struggling with their hatred of other people. And the reason they hate other people sometimes is because they hate themselves. And nobody likes to hate themselves, so they push it on other people. And I have that in Sky Knights, and I have that in all my stories. And a novel I finished last year, I had two soldiers who hated my hero. One of them blamed his brother's death on him when his brother wasn't anywhere near him, and another one blamed her lack of advance in the military because he was stealing those events from her, and he didn't even know her. So the two of them get in a mission with him, and they're looking for a way to murder him. And innocent people around him, members of his team, get killed by these people. And he still doesn't go after them because he doesn't believe in soldiers killing soldiers. Like that, you don't kill the people around you. You just survive with it. And, in the real world, we have people that are family members that don't like us, that are jealous of us, or just angry. They have all these pains in them. They don't know what to do with them. And if you're on the outside, you just have to live with it and forgive them and love them, and that's all you can do. That may not answer your question, but it's the only answer I have right now.
It's a good one, actually. That was very in-depth. Okay, so lastly, without giving too much away, do you believe the characters in Sky Knights ever truly defeat their internal darkness? Or is the book more about the journey of learning how to fly despite it?
No, it's not about the learning how to fly. They've already done that. And it's really, everybody's looking for happiness and security and purpose in their lives. And when they feel that somebody else is taking that away from them, and 99% of the time nobody is, then they transfer that hatred and anger to somebody else. And that makes them feel good. But inside, deep down, I'm sure they still feel like, well, I'm not going to use the word loser, because that's not a good word at all. But they feel traumatized by it. And getting over trauma is a very difficult thing. And it's not something that is easy. And people in war who suffer through that, well, every book I've read about warfare concerning actual people and not just battles and stuff like that, which I'm not really interested in at all, that the people learn to work together and survive together. And some of them have hatred that cannot be solved, and they, like one of my best friends, his brother, after experiencing that, he just went off by himself, and he didn't drink himself to death. He just cut himself off from all people and eventually faded away. And that was because he couldn't deal with that. So he did. So Well, I guess maybe he did drink himself to death. He took drugs and he drank until it killed him. And I don't know what happens to us after we die. If God, I believe in God. I'm a strong believer, but I still have to admit the afterlife. But I don't know if there is one. And if there isn't, I don't know what happens, and it doesn't really matter. It's like going to sleep. You go to sleep and you just don't have any bad dreams or any dreams at all, and that's it. But I'm not sure that that's the truth. And I don't know if that applies to this answer here. But what I do know is people suffer, and the only way they can stop suffering is by finding something to lift them up. And in my stories, I have all kinds of characters. But you have to understand, I have to put conflict into these stories. People don't write, not that they don't write, they don't read stories that don't have conflict. If you have a lot of conflict, they're reading them all the time. A lot of mysteries have, in fact, almost, I guess all mysteries have a lot of conflict in there. You have people that are good guys and people are bad guys, and people are caught in between and think that the good guys are bad guys and the bad guys are good guys. And they have to come to grips with all of that. You see that in all good fiction, whether it's science fiction or mysteries or love stories or anything else like that. You have that happen. The guy that his name was Sully, that landed that plane in the Hudson River because there was no place else to land it. Even though he knew that it was the right thing to do, he still had high people up in the government and in aeronautics wanting to go after him, because they thought that he'd done something stupid and so wrong when he did the right thing. And in the end, it's turned out that he did do the right thing. But in between, you have all that conflict in there. People who are not necessarily jealous, but they might feel their position has been threatened or something like that. And we live... Basically, I like to say we live in a world of idiots, and I'm one of them.
It was really in-depth, and yes, the way you answered the question, that's really, wow, mind-blowing. Okay, I like that. Okay, so Jim, thank you for sharing the story behind Sky Knights. The greatest enemy is the darkness within. Your work reminds us that history is not just made up of events and timelines, but of people, their fears, their courage, and their enduring strength. And to everyone joining us at Bookwrights House, thank you for being part of this conversation. May today's story inspire you to look beyond the surface of history. Until next time, keep reading, keep reflecting, and keep discovering the stories that define who we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.